And right now, there's a push to restore the Federal Wire Act based on the absence of current federal legislation. The bills, titled the Restoration of America's Wire Act, introduced last month by Republican Lindsey Graham of South Carolina in the Senate and Representative Jason Chaffetz of Utah in the House. The bills would change the language of the Federal Wire Act, which in 1961 criminalized certain types of wire communications. Several other Republicans have backed the restoration bills. In a letter to congressional leaders, Florida Governor Rick Scott said, allowing internet gaming to invade the homes of every American family and be piped into our dens, our living rooms, our workplaces, even our kids' bedrooms and dorm rooms is a major decision. We must examine carefully the short and long-term social and economic consequences before internet gaming spreads. Joining us now, an opponent of the bills, Michelle Minton. She's the director of Sindustry Studies. You get that? The sin in industry? Sindustry Studies at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Michelle Minton, we welcome you now to America's Forum.
It's good to be on.
And we thank you for Skyping in. So, Michelle, can you give us an in-depth breakdown of these two bills?
Right. So what you have, I guess it really all starts back in 2011 when the Department of Justice looked at the Wire Act, which was written in 1961. And the Department of Justice said, by the letter of the law, this does not ban online gambling unless we're talking about sports gambling. And the Department of Justice was asked to look at this specific law by New York and Illinois because they wanted to sell lottery tickets online and they wanted to make sure they were compliant with the law. But once the DOJ came out with that decision, all the other states took that as meaning that they could legalize online gambling within their borders, which some of them did. New Jersey, Nevada, and Delaware all legalized and now have regulated online gambling. Lindsey Graham and Jason Chaffetz and others looked at what the DOJ did in 2011 as unilaterally changing the law, which, you know, the way I look at it isn't exactly what the DOJ did. They examined the law. And they said that it doesn't apply to what they thought it did in the past. And the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with them in 2002. They also looked at the Wire Act and said, no, it only applies, if it applies to online gambling at all, to sports gambling. Because remember, this is the 1961 Wire Act. There was no internet when this bill was written.
Yeah, and so we've seen changes in technology and changes in habits in terms of entertainment. And while you gave us a sound public policy recitation, there's also a political angle to this. Michelle, in a blog, you expressed concern for the Republican Party. You wrote, quote, online gambling is about to start a war inside the GOP. How do you see these battle lines being drawn?
Well, you have a traditional conservative and Republican value is states' rights, right? The ability for states to regulate things, economic things within their own borders. And then you have somebody from Las Vegas, Sheldon Adelson, a very, very wealthy man, the 11th wealthiest person in the world, and a prominent GOP donor who has said he'll spend whatever it takes to stop online gambling from being legalized. Then all of a sudden you have this bill introduced by Republicans and supported by a lot of Republicans that would reverse laws that states have already passed. So that you have Republicans asking Congress to overturn states' laws, which I think will definitely it should incense some of the other members of the GOP who actually believe in states' rights and furthermore believe in individual rights. This should be something left up to the states to decide.
So in terms of the rosters of opponents, it's an interesting coalition coming together. You mentioned Sheldon Adelson in terms of the casinos he owns in Vegas and other places, the idea being we want people to use the casinos as destinations. And then you've got people on the social right, some used to call it the religious right, saying, well, we don't want to see the spread of gaming in this way electronically because it literally invades every household. So you've got people who are very entrenched in gaming lining up with people who don't want anything to do with it, all to try and stop this technological innovation.
And the coalitions that are forming up on the other side, in opposition to these Wire Act restoration bills, is very interesting as well. You have Democrats supporting states' rights, which, as I mentioned before, is traditionally a GOP value. And you've got Democrats standing up for businesses, because there are plenty of casinos in Las Vegas and Atlantic City and others that want to get into online gambling. They want it to be legalized so that they can move into that industry.
So, Michelle, there's another aspect to this when we talk about updating states' rights. There's been a Republican libertarian fusion, for lack of a better term. I think about Rand Paul of Kentucky, now the junior senator of Kentucky. Many people expecting him to follow in his dad's footsteps and run for president in 2016. Has Senator Paul weighed in on this issue yet?
As far as I know, he hasn't. Many people haven't weighed in on this yet, including people like Governor Chris Christie, whose state recently legalized online gambling. He signed a bill legalizing online gambling just because it really hasn't picked up too much steam yet. And
I've got to tell you, as a recovering member of Congress, Michelle, when I take a look at two gentlemen who may have national ambitions, I'm reminded of the admonition that many people hear behind closed doors if they're in elective office. Hey, keep your powder dry on this one, because there are passionate people on either side. And it brings to mind the old anecdote from my native South when a Southern member of Congress was confronted on a controversial question. He said, well, some of my friends are for it, some of my friends are against it. I think I'm going to side with my friends. So you see that kind of neutrality coming, perhaps as there are those with national ambitions trying to avoid a big fight here. At any rate, Michelle Minton, we appreciate your thoughts on this. We hope you'll come back and visit us soon. Update us on what's going on with the rewrite of the Wire Act and the emerging states' rights issues in terms of these battle lines being drawn in the Republican Party and elsewhere. Really do appreciate your time, Michelle.
Anytime.
Thanks so much. Michelle Minton blogging in there, or actually Skyping in, talking about her blog. And we're using the internet not for gaming, but to get your comments. What do you think is going to happen here? We'd love for you to tweet us your comments at NewsmaxTV, #America's Forum. Also, you've got email and Facebook, and we're coming right back.